Well, welcome. Visited Mercer before. All right, so just a few of you haven't. Okay, well, welcome. All right. I think the little insert. No, that's it. Okay. Oh, great. Okay.
Sometimes I have to just tap that once. Now try.
Why not?
Oh, sometimes if you turn it on.
Oh,
I always
that
forget that
helps.
part too.
It's the first time I've used this room. Yeah, this room, we used to teach classes in here almost, multiple times a year before 2017. And then Harvey came along. We had 6 feet of water in here. But the county had to wait for obvious reasons to reopen us, considering all the conditions with the public in the area. So we just reopened the building in January. So this is the first time I've used it to teach a class. So Mercer was developed in the 40s by Charles and Thelma Mercer as a private garden. Can everybody hear me? Okay, all right. And the county purchased Mercer's 14.5 acres in 1974. We're now on this, strictly located on this side of Aldine Westfield at about 200 acres. So we still are totally free and open almost every day of the year, except for a few major holidays. So our mission is connecting people with plants and nature to improve the quality of life, inspire the greater appreciation of the essential value and beauty of the plant world. And we seek to establish and maintain a versatile botanical facility for the greater Houston and Gulf Coast region, serving the public, the horticulture industry, and the scientific community. So Mercer has had a very long history with conservation of native plants. We formally became a participating institution with a international organization called the Center for Plant Conservation in 1989. San Antonio Botanic Garden was the first in the state of Texas, and they shepherded us into the fold in 1989. And now, since then, Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center joined, Desert Botanic Garden and the Arboretum and Flagstaff in Arizona also handle our Texas plants, the desert plants and the high altitude plants. Our last partner to join in the last couple of years is the Botanical Research Institute of Texas up in Fort Worth, which is an amazing facility if you ever have a chance, as are all the others. There's 73 participating institutions, all the major botanic gardens. I can think of a few that aren't, like Dallas hasn't joined yet. And we manage over 2,000 species. Each of the organizations, departments direct where our plant material is used for genetic research or restoration. Our seeds, we have a seed bank here for about 30 species. They're backed up with the National Lab for Genetic Resources Preservation. That's a USDA facility in Fort Collins. And then our subsets of seeds are backed up with our partners here in Texas. So Carolyn gave you a brief introduction to the Mercer Botanic Center. And we, some of you have chosen to take a tour of the facility today, so we'll do that at the end. But there we house the library and library collections, botanical illustration collection, the sign shop for the garden, labs, and many other things. And due to all the experience we've had with horrible floods and hurricanes, we now, well, it's been there for several years now, have a backup generator, standby generator for the building. We installed hurricane screens in the upper floors of the building. And thank you, Carolyn. And this is a glimpse of what it looked like at the Botanical Center. So the building actually received 8 to 9 inches of water. And when we first moved in, everybody reassured us that no, this building has never flooded. Do whatever you want to. And I said, Wimberley happened, okay, the big flood in Wimberley, which was a treacherous flood. And then I looked at the creek, which you can see from the building, and I said, no, we're putting the herbarium collections upstairs. And I'm so grateful that I did. And I had, you know, really have to argue with the administrators about that. But thank goodness we did it. So I hope those of you that went through Harvey did all right. And I'm sorry for your problems with that. So we were pretty well shut down for at least a month after that, but and areas of the garden have been slowly reopened since then. The last to open are the trails that are beyond the central garden areas. And we're happy to say that our greenhouses and nursery facilities were relocated that way, uphill and further out of the floodplain. And we're very excited about that. Here's an image of our Story Lake, which is basically an oxbow lake, one of the remainders of Cypress Creek. And we've turned it into a beautiful ornamental lake. So today we'll visit the endangered and native plant garden. And did any of you attend the Native Plant Society landscape training? Okay, so you guys, if you did level 1, you may have come here. How many came here for that? Okay, great. And it's been a really popular class. It teaches the public, and it also provides continuing education for folks in the landscaping business. And we train people how to identify native plants, which ones we like for landscaping or recommend for landscaping, and how to do that. In addition to that, we, Elise, how many kids do we have going through here? We had an estimate of 3,000 kids, and then, yeah, through tours. Yeah. So we work with scouts here, parks and wildlife programs and workshops, then the training for the master naturalists, hello, and gardeners, and even the environmental engineers come out here to study our displays. We're part of an international organization called the Botanic Gardens Conservation International. That organization holds 600 member gardens, and it's growing in over 100 countries. We found out that we hold 30% of the total species and 41% of the rare species in all these various 600 member gardens, which is pretty amazing. So one program we've been part of here is the Global Strategy of Plant Conservation and the North American Botanic Garden Strategy. Our database of our living collection is shared with all these member institutions. So researchers from all over the world will contact us, and we provide material when we're able to. Obviously, those folks here in the States are the typical recipients that we work with. So we also had a wonderful experience back in the early 2000s working with the Millennium Seed Bank Project at which is housed the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew. Through that program, we hosted 8 training classes here in partnership with Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. And we hosted seed botanists from Kew that helped teach the classes here. So we trained over 80 volunteers, and a lot of these volunteers, many of them were with like-minded organizations here in the Houston metro area, like Katy Prairie, the Audubon Society. So we basically helped train these organizations in the methods for seed collecting and seed banking. It was a lot of fun. So as I mentioned, we maintain a conservation display garden, rare native seed bank, and a conservation nursery, and a prairie preserve. You'll see there at the bottom right, our former colleague Suzanne Chapman at the Prairie. So now I'm going to switch to another program real quick. Thought it would be easier than that. All right. All right, you may need to assist me. I see that I see it, but
Right, but the people at home are still seeing
Right.
the old ones. So let's go down here.
thank you, Carol.
Okay.
So we're going to switch programs here. Hello. Thanks for your patience.
Is it that one? Or this one?
This one. Yes.
Perfect. Let's see if they're seeing it home.
Excellent. All right. All right.
Let me make sure that this is right. Loading moving control. There we go.
Okay.
Flip it forward. Let's make sure it works. Yep.
Very good.
We did.
Okay.
Don't trip.
Sorry for the delay. Here's another view of our facilities, our visitor center. That Mercer Botanical Center is shown on the left during a little bit of snow that we received. I think that was 2018 or so, or the winter of 2017, I'm not sure. And again, a view of the Prairie Dawn Preserve with its little tiny Texas Prairie Dawn flowers, which are a listed species by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that we've been working with since the 80s here at Mercer. So I'm going to go through and invite you to join us with some of these projects that we work with. We're delighted to have you work with us. Through the Botanic Gardens, We need assistance with garden tours and outreach. And I think Elise can help you with things of that nature. Elise is one of our education department members. And we also have a really great time with our volunteers educating our patrons at our Mercer sales about native plants. So then another very popular project here is working with our volunteer native plant propagation team at Mercer's North Side greenhouses. And they work on Wednesday mornings. So again, the Botanical Center houses our botany and curator offices. We have two wonderful curators there, Carrie Hernandez and Zoe Matrenga. And they're a terrific bunch of people to work with us and keep our collections straight and organized. Our sign shop, which if you wander around Mercer, you'll notice all the plastic signs in front of the plants. Those are created in our Botanical Center by Carrie. If you're interested in that sort of work, Carrie would love to have assistance with that. And I'll mention more about the herbarium and the conservation nursery and seed bank soon. So we've had, I've lost count how many Heartwood members have been working with us. And we also work with other chapters, including Cross Timbers up close to Fort Worth and down to Galveston. Those are typically for seed banking projects where it's difficult for me to go to these distant places. We basically train and draft volunteers to do the collecting for us. And then also our group in Galveston has helped with surveys in some of our rare plant sites, namely the Big Thicket National Preserve. How many have you been there to Big Thicket? It's really fantastic. I need to get more brochures from them to offer those again. So at the MBC, like Carolyn mentioned, we have pollinator gardens and a conservation nursery. If you look at the left side there, you see a chain link fence. What is that, 8 feet or so height? I think it is. So that was after Harvey. And if you notice, all our tables that housed our endangered plants and restoration plants basically floated up and collected in one corner. So this is not too atypical. When we flood, the collection rides on the wooden tables and they settle down wherever they want. Amazingly, we only lost just a few plants. We're good about attaching tags to the pots and positioning the plants so we don't lose them. We're very proud to have the new nursery behind the center, and it was funded by the Garden Club of Houston and the River Oaks Garden Club, and some funds also for the Center for Plant Conservation. So it's a great place to have it. It's up out of the flood zone on a hill behind the building. It's easy for us to work with interns and volunteers, and it's a very secure fenced-in location. So here, you know this person. We always love to have people help us in the Botanical Reference Library. We're going to be totally lost when Carolyn leaves because she has been our librarian for how many years now, Carolyn? I've lost count. 10? More than 10? 2015. Okay, so approaching 10 years. Okay. So Carolyn was clever enough to convert our catalog to the Library of Congress. She has a master's degree in library science, and she placed our catalog online. So if you look at the HTTP address there, you can access our library catalog online, and you're welcome to come over and use books there at the library, but we don't check them out. There we have very important collections from the Spring Branch Science Center, which is a loaned collection along with our Mercer Library collection, which includes the private collections from Dr. Larry Brown, who's passed away, but he was a well-known plant taxonomist for the Houston metro area. And then also Missouri Botanical Gardens, Peter Raven and Pat Raven's personal library collections, and donations from local plant societies and our wonderful volunteers as well. So we're up to about approaching to 6,000 holdings, and Carolyn cataloged all of those. So, and here's a big project. We at the Botanical Center work with our herbarium collection. This is the closest herbarium. Does everybody know what a herbarium is? Okay, it's a collection of flattened dried plants that are attached to archival paper. And we have some laminated ones here. And on the pages that has the information about what the plant is, who collected it, when, and often very detailed information about what other plants were present at the site. So I know Barb has been working on this collection, entering barcodes. We're now excited in that probably most of our 42,000 specimens will be imaged and placed online as part of a National Science Foundation grant. And the interns started on that December. This June, we'll have a new intern to help us with that. So who knows, if you're interested in imaging specimens, I'm sure the interns enjoy assistance and company. So as they image, they apply barcodes, and then our volunteers enter the barcodes in our system. So in 2016, we received a long-term loan of the 50,000 herbarium specimens from the Spring Branch Science Center, the SBSC, which is part of the Spring Branch ISD. 2016 to 2017, and I think Barbara helped do this. Mercer, our volunteers, moved these collections from the Spring Branch Center to Mercer. Why? Spring Branch was looking to convert the herbarium space to additional classroom space, which makes sense for their facility. And their primary curator at that time was Dr. Larry Brown, and he approached us around 2012 and asked, please, can you adopt this collection? Well, we didn't have space at that time. But in 2014, we received the Mercer Botanical Center building. So our Commissioner Cagle at that time, helped arrange that loan, and the collection was moved here entirely in 2017. That includes their botanical library and their illustration collection. At the bottom is an image of one of the illustrations. So Lynn McMain shown there working in one of the cabinets. You'll see the specimens are stacked on top of one another very carefully. Lynn was the first person that worked at Mercer with the SBSC collection to enter the collection into the database. Lynn's was at that time was a master naturalist also with Heartwood. So by 2020, amazingly, all 42,000 of the mounted specimens were already inventoried, and the basic inventory information was entered into our database, which is pretty amazing. So in addition to that, some of our special collections that we adopted, like all the rare Texas species, the orchids, the milkweeds, all of those specimens were totally cataloged and even geo-referenced. So that's one project we're working on now, is geo-referencing. So our volunteers help with databasing, the geo-referencing, entering barcodes, and also restoration of the specimens. Some of these arrived in very bad condition because insects had infested the collections at the Spring Branch Science Center. And that's an ongoing battle one has with the herbaria. In the past, curators use things like arsenic. That never happened with any of the collections that we work with. Unfortunately, they did use mothballs, and that smell lingers and persists in the paper, but we no longer use mothballs. In fact, the main thing we use is an insect growth inhibitor only, and that doesn't have an effect on humans. And occasionally we'll use boric acid or pyrethrin. But the main method of controlling the pests, you can imagine if you put plant material in a home, eventually, silverfish and little bugs will infest it, flower beetles, whatever. Now herbaria all over the world, in fact, Australia is totally converted to freezing their specimens only, no more chemicals, and that works pretty neat. I visited the Royal Botanic Garden in Sydney a few years ago, and all their specimens are in plastic tubs, so they periodically just move them to the freezer. I mentioned the NSF grant. That's awarded to the Texas-Oklahoma Regional Consortium of Herbaria, or TORCH. And this will allow the armchair botanists to help us. So once these specimens are imaged, you'll probably be introduced to that program, the armchair botanists, through the Botanical Research Institute of Texas. They're pros at that. So they're volunteers from their home. And I think Carolyn and Bobby have done that. Is that? Okay. I thought you guys had done some of that. So from your home, you can log in, draw up specimens that haven't been databased and enter the data. And then Britt reviews that at some point and moves it to the national database. One thing we notice is our volunteers love to actually handle the specimens. So we're continuing the hands-on type databasing. And like I said, it's been a very popular program, volunteer project. So Mercer partners with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and the other CPC partners in the state. Is that rain or what? It's funny, oh yeah, now I can see it. Okay. All right. So botanists with Parks and Wildlife, Britt, or Botanical Research Institute of Texas, Lady Bird Johnson, the Nature Conservancy of Texas, they review the species occurrence records of all these rare species. And annually, some of these groups and hopefully most of them go out in the field and they actually monitor the numbers of species. So by doing so, they can actually identify which of these plants are becoming rare. And they compile their information, and that's put on a record called the Plant Species of Greatest Conservation Need List. So you can actually go online and take a look at that list, the summary of records. But that list is what helps guide Mercer with regards to which plants to start collecting. So based on their rarity. So here, I'll just briefly go over this, but the global ranking, you may have heard about that, global ranks and state ranks for rare species, animals and plants. But we work with G1 through G3 level species. So a G1 would be where there are only 6 populations globally. G2, 7 to 20, and G3, 21 to 100. And that's globally. And then you get introduced to state ranks also. So the same numbers apply for the state ranks. Okay. So Mercer has seed banked throughout the East Texas area. Those pins indicate where rare species are located in the East Texas area. You see the concentration of species over in the Big Thicket area. That's one of our crossroads of plant diversity in the United States. So there are 230 rare species at present, and Mercer maintains about 30 of these species in seed banks. Oops. Okay, that wasn't good. Okay, and this chart shows the counties, and if you notice the East Texas Big Thicket area counties such as Jasper have some of the greatest numbers of rare species. So these are some of the local Houston metropolitan rare species that we work with. We maintain a small prairie preserve. It's less than 5 acres, but it actually shelters 4 naturally occurring rare prairie species. The preserve is close to Willowbrook Mall, if you know where that is, off 1960 West. We've worked with guiding the conservation of those plants since about 2005. And then it was actually, the preserve was constructed starting 2012. That prairie preserve had been totally covered with trees. So one of the first things we have to do to restore the prairie is to remove 40 of those trees. And you can see on the left where it shows before and after, it shows after we've removed the trees. So here again is the location. The green pin at the top is the Botanical Center. And here is the location of the preserve, the yellow pin down there. It's close to the intersection of Cutton Road and West Greens Road. That preserve was created because the extension of West Greens Road was needed by the county. So typically when they propose to do a road, they send out environmental scientists and archaeologists to survey these sites where the roads are going in. If any endangered species or artifacts are found, then they do their best to reroute the road, or in some cases they don't even build the road. In our case, they were able to shift the road a little bit to preserve most of this rare plant habitat. There's a little preserve. And here are three of the major species that we work with at the preserve. We work with the Center for Plant Conservation, which offers a sponsorship program. So private citizens and organizations will help sponsor these species that we work with. And in doing so, Mercer receives a small stipend every year to help maintain our program during, rough economic times. These funds help pay for gas, horticulture supplies, whatever, to help maintain our seed bank and plant collection. So Houston camphor daisy is a fall blooming member of the aster family. And it's a really cool little plant. It and the Texas windmill grass, and definitely the Texas prairie dawn at the bottom right, all grow in association with these saline slick areas in the prairies. These are very unique little spots affected by hydrology and the geologic conditions of the site. The Houston prairie dawn at the bottom right is very tiny. The little yellow areas there where the blooms are about the size, if not smaller, than a pencil eraser. So Texas windmill grass is the rarest grass in Texas, and we're the populations of all these plants fluctuate, but at present we hold the greatest number of these windmill grasses at the preserve. So every year we monitor these three rare species. In the fall, we work with the windmill grass and the Houston camphor daisy, and in the spring, Texas prairie dawn. It's a federally listed species. So we report our numbers to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I know Barbara has helped survey the Texas prairie dawn at the preserve this past year, if not before that. Yeah. So, all right, again, these yellow outlined areas are these very unusual saline slick areas. So we monitor populations of the prairie dawn and Ray Jacksonia around those, within those areas. And the chloris, kind of the Texas windmill grass, hangs out along the edges. All right, some of our ongoing work. We did seed and plant rescues before this preserve was constructed in the areas where the construction would be. We've surveyed and created checklists of over 200 species of plants that occur on just this little less than 5 acre preserve. Our Dr. Larry Brown, who's now passed away, Jason Singhurst with Parks and Wildlife, various volunteers with the Master Naturalists, Native Plant Society of Texas, and our volunteers help us with that. A lot of work involves removing invasive species. So in a minute, I'll show you some of the invasive species that we work with. We also do management. Basically, at this point, it's strictly time mowing and hand removal of invasives. We had actually submitted a burn plan to the Harris County, but that was submitted before, just as COVID hit. So it's sort of lost in all the paperwork. We're going to have to submit it again. Birding would be the best option for this site, but whether it's approved or not, that's another issue. You're probably familiar that the Memorial Park, they actually conduct pretty significant burns. Katy Prairie does, the Texas City Nature Conservancy Preserve. So there are larger areas that do burning. We've had issues, and I'll show you this in a minute, with erosion at the edges of the preserve because the saline soils that intersect with the fence line easily erode because there's nothing to hold them in place. And the little prairie dawn's not going to hold the saline soil in place. So I'll show you some images in a minute. So currently we're also working with 2 grants. We're hosting researchers that are studying the pollination and seed dispersal of the prairie dawn, which is very exciting. We'll be meeting with them again on the 22nd at the preserve. And then we also assist the East Texas Bee Survey grant. And this grant is facilitated by the Sam Houston and also SFA. So we've actually been trained on how to do that, and our volunteers and staff actually help with the bee survey here at Mercer at one of our rare plant experimental planning sites downtown and also at the preserve. So at the bottom, you'll see Barbara again. Barbara does everything for us. She's helping clean seeds. And you may know also Denise Hall. She's a master naturalist with Heartwood. Both ladies help us clean 2 collections of the Texas Prairie Dawn from Trinity and Waller County in 2022. And the bottom right, this shows our typical method of surveying the little tiny Texas Prairie Dawn. We use these half-meter grids to count the plants and estimate the area that they occupy. Here we go. We also maintain permanent plots at the preserve. The permanent plots will monitor any changes in the vegetation. And we're seeing changes already. If you can imagine, this is less than 5 acres and it's surrounded by concrete roads, buildings. The environmental consulting company that helped design the preserve included swales and berms to help limit the inflow of polluted water, but also help maintain the hydrology of the preserve. So this is just a big experiment, but it's will be very helpful in understanding how these sites react to urban development. So we're doing pretty good out there. Again, here's some of our team working on removing invasive species. And as COVID hit, one of our interns, Ella Matsuda, she created these beautiful posters for interpretive posters for the prairie. I have some printouts of those there. And Ella's in the bottom there. Just before COVID hit, she helped us do a survey of prairie dawn at preserve. And then she also helped design a key to the 42 grasses found at the preserve. And I brought that here for you to look at. So here's some of our restoration work. You'll see on the left how eroded and cracked the soil is. That white saline soil is very easily damaged. So what our director and our staff did is we laid these straw wattles at the bottom along the fence line. These were sterile so no seed would emerge from the straw. And then they packed in topsoil and overlaid that with compost. And then we planted, and a lot of Heartwood volunteers helped with that, planted native, local sourced plants to help retain that soil. And it's worked very well, actually. So here is a very complicated chart, but it's the yellow rectangles represent the counts of our prairie dawn from the year 16 through 22. The earlier counts aren't included because starting 2016, the flood control installed a weather station close to where we were. So that way we could track the rainfall, which is shown in blue. And you can see the little hurricane on the top. That would be Mr. Harvey. And then you'll see the little snowflake in the bottom right. That's Mr. Uri. So it's been very interesting. And as we collect more data over time, we can actually try to figure out, okay, what is directing the germination and success of these prairie dawn plants at preserve? Is it water? Is it temperature? Well, it's definitely not temperature. Look at the cold temperature, because we had a boom year of prairie dawn after that. So this year, values aren't on this chart yet, but we rebounded up to 5,549 little plants this year. So the preserve is working pretty well. These are more of the local Houston metropolitan species we work with. Texas meadow root, a very tiny plant, also shows its face in the late winter. It's a perennial, shoots up, blooms, and then is gone before the end of the spring. We work with one site down at Willow Park in Houston. Then this one is another associate of the rare species I discussed, the prairie dawn, Houston camphor daisy, and the windmill grass. It's three-flower Thorovia. It's a little member of the aster family, very sweet smelling, and is a great attractor of bees on the prairie when it blooms in the fall. We've also added, and we do this as more, unfortunately, as plants are added because they're rare to our the concern list, then we adopt those and begin our seed collections on them. We've added in the last years a giant sharp stem umbrella sedge, coastal gay feather, branch gay feather, and the nodding yucca. And today you'll be able to see the nodding yucca. It's about to bloom. We have some in the display garden. And you'll see some of the other plants that I've discussed. Thicket plants. Slender gay feather is one that we work with. And here is showing us in the fall, Pauline Singleton of the Watson Rare Native Plant Preserve and Minette Moore of Ladybird. We're collecting seeds of this species in Angelina National Forest. Texas trailing phlox is probably one of our most important plants that we work with in the big thicket. It's a federally listed species. And we have this plant on display as well. We've helped with the outplanting of this plant on one of the property close to within the thicket. And here's another volunteer opportunity. We've had a lot of fun doing surveys for this plant out in the Big Thicket National Preserve. Some of the folks in here are Heartwood members, Galveston chapter members. You'll probably recognize some if you come to our plant sales. Sherry Cruz is in the back. She works in the herb section. Dennis Samoska is with our native plant propagation team, and the photographer Don Dubois is also with our propagation team. Here's another plant we work with, the white firewheel, also in the sunflower family, big thicket species. Long sepaled false dragonhead in the mint family. Scarlet catchfly in the pink family. And now moving on to other habitats north and east of Houston, post oak savannas, glades, ravines, and rock outcrops. Here is white bladderpod, and you'll see the fruits of this plant when we go out in, hopefully, between the rains. Look at the garden. And we're hoping to get up to San Augustine County in the coming weeks to do a seed collection of this plant. It's this plant is only found in one county globally on the earth. That's it, St. Augustine County. One of its pals or associates in San Augustine is another member of the mustard family, the Texas Golden Gladecrest. And this one already set seeds very early in the spring, and we received a fresh collection this year from our partners up at San Augustine. This plant, actually, I need to remove from the list because now we've transferred it to the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, their CPC partner. So, but we still maintain seeds, and we have some plant on display in the garden of this. Here shows some of our work trying to actually collect the seeds. It was a challenge because as soon as those shoots come up, the deer get on them. So our friends at Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge, they constructed fences to exclude the deer. And we were successful. 2013, volunteers collected those from the Master Naturalist chapter up there and shipped them down to us. And here's some of those lovely volunteers that helped also at the Southwest Nature Preserve in Arlington with the Cross Timbers chapter. So basically, we trained them how to collect the seed. They collected on their own and then FedEx them to us. So it's a long drive to that area, so it really helps to have the volunteers help us. Here's another plant, large fruited sand verbena, which is a beautiful species found in the post oak savannas north of here. Navasota false foxglove, also found on interesting sandstone outcrops in Grimes County, and in acidic high aluminum barrens in the pine savannas in Tyler County. So here shows Don Dubois, Dennis Samoska helping collect seeds from the Grimes County site. The plants occur on the hill behind them. So that's always a fun place to go to. We also work with the Southern Lady Slipper Orchid. We've completed collections, and we send those collections to our partners at Cincinnati Zoo and Botanic Gardens. They're tissue culture experts, so we send those on to them. All right, now wetland species. Here's one we've been working with quite a bit lately, the hibiscus daisy calyx, Natchez River rose mallow. We have been working with two experimental plantings, one in Montgomery County, and one in Harris County. And Barbara also helps with that. So, this has been an exciting project. Parks and Wildlife collected wild seeds from one of the most pristine sites for this plant in 2013 to 14. We germinated those wild collected seeds with the help of one of our student volunteers, Edwin Umanzor. And his project actually helped him win a Jack Kent Cook Scholarship in 2016, and it funded 4 years of his graduate studies. How about that? So we work with a lot of students and interns here, and I know a lot of our Master Naturalist volunteers really enjoy mentoring our interns and working with them. Here's another plant that we help with the augmentation of a site. 70 plants were rescued from a bridge construction site in Louisiana in 2002. Come 2008, our plants here at Mercer multiplied to about 600 plants. We kept saying, please, we need to get them back to you. We had hurricanes, you know, in between all this, and Katrina, well, definitely destroyed what they had reconstructed. Finally, we FedExed, again, FedEx is wonderful, 200 of the plants back to our partners, and our partners there replanted them at Abita Flatwoods Preserve and conservation easement properties. So they surveyed the site in 2009 and found over half of them, which is pretty good for a wetland species. And see here, I was hoping they would monitor in 2019. Well, here it is, 2023, and we have not had a chance to find somebody that'll help monitor those. Here it is, the rescue by our Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. And here is another one of our beautiful wetland plants. You'll see some of these today in the ES garden. It's an interesting plant, the corkwood, and it's named because in the early days, the fishermen would use the stems as floats. There have these wonderful air pockets throughout the stems and work great for floats. So they have an interesting distribution thanks to our glacial periods here in Texas and the US. They're found in Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, and Missouri. But this is a plant, and Texas, of course. Very interesting plant. Another one that has an interesting distribution. It doesn't actually occur in Texas, but we were assigned to manage the seed bank. It's the pondberry. This is a close relative of the spicebush. Some of you probably know spicebush from as a pollinator host plant for the spicebush swallowtail and tiger swallowtails too, I think. And here's another interesting member of the mint family, Correll's false dragonhead. You'll see that one today. It's found in scattered locations in Texas, and now only one location in Louisiana, and we have no idea about the status of the Mexican populations. But it's a wetland species. What's interesting is that a plant biologist, Dr. Liu of LSU Health Sciences Center in Baton Rouge, extracted materials from the leaves, stems, and roots and found that they show anti-tumor activity, which is pretty cool, I think. So Mercer helped them. Whenever we thin the plant, we would dry the material and ship them to Baton Rouge. the project has sort of come to a standstill. I think they're hoping for a little bit of extra funding. Not all the plants that we maintain are stunning or especially beautiful, but they are a part of our diverse ecosystem. And here's one, Texas screw stem. It's a very interesting little member of the gentian family. It's amazing. The gentian family has so many beautiful flowers. This one occurs in acid seeps in forests and bog habitats. And we've collected the last few years, we've managed to make some collections. It's shows you how tiny the seeds are here of this plant. This plant is assumed to be partially parasitic on plants around it. So it will require some special culture techniques, maybe using orchid propagation media or media such as that. So we hope to work with that again once we get some additional fresh material. One more time.
What do you mean by the acid seep? You said they grow
Yes. Okay, acid seeps are wetland areas associated with dense woodlands. The materials, the tannins from the trees, from the woodlands, lowers the acidity of the bog areas around these plants. So it's all that rotting vegetation, sphagnum, whatever. It raises the acidity in the water. So an acid seep would be an area where the rain and water filters through these wetland forests and slowly trickles into the waterways, and because of that, the acidity is the way it is. So, and this plant also is associated with some of those seepage areas. It's the bog coneflower, another one from the Big Thicket area and southwestern Louisiana. The rough stem aster is another rare plant we work with. It's a wetland species and found in northeast Texas. We're still working with that species. It's possible we may transfer that one to Britt as well. Texas trillium, another, again, acid seepage species. We've collected around the Nacogdoches area for this one. And here we are. We can talk a little bit about invasive plants now if we would like to turn on the lights. This shows one of our adopt-a-trail teams several years ago, but Heartwood does actually still have a marked adopt-a-trail area on the west side, which is now Precinct 1. But I'm sure Precinct 1 would be very happy to have people work there. Let's go over some of our invasive species. You know, I mentioned herbarium assessment. Well, I passed out. I'm not going to I passed out a handout about how you can create your own herbarium at home. And whether you do so or not, it's probably a good idea to read that because it does discuss the ethics of collecting so that you don't collect the last plant of a species. You have to get landowner permission, all those little details. So please take a look at that. Our partners at Britt and Mercer helped teach. Well, we partnered to teach a class at the last Master Naturalist meeting about creating your own herbarium specimens and working with herbaria. So since many of you haven't ever seen a herbarium press, I brought one in. These were some that were created for the Millennium Seed Bank project. Because each time you collect a seed, you have to voucher. That means collect a specimen of the plant and prove that you're collecting the correct seeds, right? So these are the boards that form the outside of the press. These are the straps that you tighten. I usually stand on top of it and tighten the strap. And these are homemade. You can see what material they use. You can also buy presses from Forestry Supply Company or Carolina Biological. So it's like creating a lasagna. So and then also, this is important, we print out a sheet where we record all the information about where the plant was collected, the date, the time, the you know, you can go to as detailed if you want, the associated species, you know, what color the flowers were, because sometimes when you dry a plant, the colors change. So we normally use newspaper, or you can buy pre-cut herbarium paper. So what you do is you put your plant specimen, you spread out, make sure, you know, some leaves are facing up, some down, and fold open the flowers so you can see all the parts within it. And then that piece goes between two pieces of blotter paper. You would do it like this. This is your ventilator, the cardboard, right? It's corrugated cardboard. Put your blotter paper on top of the cardboard. Then your specimen and the information that you've written down about the specimen inside the paper. And then you do the same thing, put another piece of blotter paper and then cardboard on top of that. Okay, so you'll have a series of these in your press. We found these foam sheets be handy if you have something like a woody material and it's hard to squash the wood flat. This will, you know, accommodate the thickness of the twig and yet it'll flatten the leaves in a nice flat manner. So you can use that as well, and then you simply put the top piece on, put your straps around, and you can leave them in your trunk in the summer and that'll dry them out. We have a dryer, a little homemade dryer that we use at the Botanical Center. So, okay, so I need to switch programs again, Carolyn. Better luck next year. Hopefully next year also I'll be able to do what I used to do and set up more live material display and things. It's much more interesting to see the real thing. There we go. All right. So why is it that we're making this effort to conserve our native plants, wildflowers? How do they benefit our humanity? Well, I'm preaching to the choir, so we'll go through this quickly. So plant life, obviously,
is a necessary component for life on Earth. And the material represents a genetic gold mine. So a lot of our future medicines, past medicines, current medicines, our crops and countless products are derived from plants. But why care about the wild relatives? Well, a lot of times our breeders for farming and crop production, they actually go back to the wild relatives to breed in certain resistant genes to whatever the case may be, whether it's temperature, flavor, or drought resistance. So their wild crop relatives are very, very important. We're we started working one global program to preserve our fruit and nut wild crop relatives. So that includes things like the chestnuts, hickories, and things of that nature. And we'll probably start working on that this summer with our interns. So why is Texas so super diverse? Well, we have 400 species of plants that are found nowhere else on Earth. Comparably, close to 6,000 species in the state as a total, about 20,000 in North America, north of Mexico, and estimates of vascular plant species. I've seen it from 350 up to 390,000 plants. So the sheer size of our state and the diversity of our climate, geology, soils, water, topography, and the fact that we have 6 North American ecosystems here provides for all the background material needed to develop a very diverse flora and fauna. So you've already gone over this, just a reminder about our ecoregions of Texas. We have approximately 464 butterfly species in Texas, over 800 in the US, and over 630 bird species of 888 or so species in the US. Here, this is important, our Houston metro area. I don't know whether Preston mentioned that in his discussion, but we have 2 major ecoregions, piney woods and the Gulf Coast prairies and marshes, and then little smidgens of post oak savanna and blackland prairies. So why are our native plants under threat in this area? Loss of habitat, loss of habitat, loss of habitat. Basically, just throw in a little over collecting of some of the rare species like orchids and some rare cacti that wasn't shown there are not rare. Invasive species, we've discussed that. Climate change, apathy. Other things such as overgrazing. The image I showed there was when I took a Katy Prairie, which is like the example of the best possible grazing situations. They're kings of rotating their cattle, and also the mining in the background. I believe that's a salt mine. Again, depending on the companies, the mining practices can be very sustainable surrounding lands. And think about it, bison used to roam all over the state, right? And so a cow is a pretty good substitute for the bison. And, you know, we've considered borrowing a couple of cows to put in our preserve to help them maintain things. Goats, I don't know, maybe we can consider that too. So it's a lot to think about. So getting on to taxonomy, our plant families, again, Preston touched on this, did we go through dichotomous keys a bit with elms and oaks, okay? So I won't go through using a dichotomous key. He used the flora of North Central Texas, I believe, for the elms and oaks, and see how patterned ours is. So much of the flora overlap in our area. And then in the series, Botanical Research Institute of Texas, and also, and this one really neat, the flora of East Texas. They've also come out with the Trans-Taco and the ferns of Texas. And all that is a spin-off of Rel and Johnson's Flora of Texas. And this is like the Bible of plant taxonomy, but not one single illustration. So they found plants.
Yeah.
So anyway, that particular one, Brett is expanding with illustrated flora. So I highly recommend that series. And we use them almost daily. Another one that I love is this Tree Shrubs and Woody Vines of East Texas. I know it's probably an expensive book to get, $80 or so, but it's really great, beautiful illustrations in it, thanks to Bruce Cunningham, who's a wonderful artist. So plants, what I'm trying to do here, and I won't spend that much time on it because we're running out of time, is that I've gone through and I've surveyed many of the popular wildflower guides for the state of Texas. Some of these are regional guides, like this Wildflowers of Houston and Southeast Texas by the Wheatons, and it's arranged by flower color. And Wildflowers of the Big Thicket. Unfortunately, when I made the slide in 2022, the author Gayata was still doing great, but she's since passed away. So I need to update this. It's a great loss to the native plant community. She's such an expert. I'm hoping that her friend and colleague Joe Liggio continues on with that book. And then here's another one that she was very famous for, Wildflowers in Texas. And then one that's a favorite of mine, and I thought I had it on these pieces. Anyway, didn't see it. Wildflowers of Texas by Mike Eason. Mike's been a associate of mine since I don't know how long, through the Center for Plant Conservation. He was the one that I taught with for the Millennium Seed Bank with the British botanists. And he's now at San Antonio Botanical Gardens as their conservation director. Okay, some of them are, some guides just focus on specific plant families, like Anne and Joe Liggio's Wild Orchids of Texas. And then more Texas wildflowers. Revision of that one is beautiful. Most of these you should be able to see, at least the orange and nodal, if not, you can order them easily online. And then the leaf and tall, George Miller, this is a great one for wildflowers, trees, and shrubs of Texas. And another. So hopefully by reading those comments about those books, you can pick out one that suits you. So science of classification. So why do we even worry about classification of plants? Well, humans are obsessed with organization, right? So think of your home decorators, car colors, hair dye colors, mechanics, organizing, nuts, bolts, etc. Well, before Carl Linnaeus, in the 1700s, plants were classified and organized by their vegetative features. But Linnaeus was a clever guy, and he was the first person to base the classification on the least variable characteristic of plants, and that's their reproductive parts, their flowers. Or in the case of non-flowering plants, their reproductive parts, yeah. He gave each plant a two-word name, a binomial, and grouped the plants into families based on their floral or reproductive parts. Now, we've gotten really smart through the years, and with genetic investigations of plants, we found that many of these earlier associations are not correct. Plants have been flying from one family to the next. Family names change on a routine basis. It's driving us nuts in the herbarium. So we have a long list of synonyms for the accepted names. So we use 3 or 4 good guides to help us choose what the current name is. But it's based on genetics, and that doesn't lie. So we need to keep up with the technology. So I brought in a book that I love for just everyday use. And possibly still find this one is the A to B gardening book by DK. And great for popular garden plants, and it has an amazing number of native plants from the United States in it. And it has wonderful guides for terminology. It discusses details about taxonomy. And what's really nice, and it tells you where the plant is native to. There's so many of these books, they don't tell you where the plants are native to. They don't even tell you the family. So to me, I think that's a very important bit of information to have about your plant. So why do we use Latin for scientific names? So the first plant experts were medicine, men, women, doctors, and Latin was the language of the early physicians. So that's still currently the universal language of physicians and scientists. Latin is considered a dead language. In other words, it remains unchanging. So that helps with assigning a name to a plant that's not going to change. So if you're trying to find information about a plant, if you don't know the scientific name, that you're very likely to be misled if you're going online and you're looking at the plant by its full name, because there's so many plants that have similar common names. So, remember that when you're trying to get information about a plant, use its scientific name. And common names are regional. So even within Texas, the common names change. And let's see. And then we're all of us are just totally frightened about pronunciation of the scientific names. And I've tried this. I've gone to YouTube and all these other guides, pronunciation guides, and you'll come up with 3 or 4 versions for the same name. So honestly, just do it. It doesn't matter. And we all correct each other here at Mercer. It all depends on who you grew up with, I guess. So, just to go through a brief summary of plants, the plant kingdom. Algae, of course, is the most primitive in the Protista as well as the plant kingdom. You know that photosynthetic plankton produce over 70% of the oxygen on Earth. Think about that. And then the rest comes from our terrestrial oxygen producing plants and bacteria. Lichens, you know, is a symbiotic combination of alga and fungus. And of course, fungi. And fungi are actually closer to animals than they are to plants. But we often teach them along with the plant kingdom plants. Now, moving on up to non-vascular spore plants. Again, vascular means they have conducting cells, and these still do not. These are the mosses, liverworts, and bourneworts. So, no vascular system. They still reproduce by spores, no seeds, and they require water for reproduction. Now, up in the evolutionary tree are the vascular spore plants. So they have a system of phloem and xylem that help conduct the food and the water throughout the plants. These still reproduce by spores, and they still require water for reproduction. So that includes the xylem, the whisperms, quillworts, I mentioned the Louisiana, spike mosses, horsetails, and ferns. We love our ferns. And then moving on up, we have vascular seed-bearing plants. So these seeds are exposed, and hence the name naked seed. Gymnosperm. This basically means naked seed. So those seeds are exposed on the bracts of the plant. So they have true stems, true leaves, true roots because they have vascular tissue. They reproduce by seeds. They don't have a fruity, leafy tissue around the ovules and no flowers. Wind is the typical way of transferring the pollen. That includes the cycads, ginkgos, and conifers. All right, and then moving on up to the flowering plants, the angiosperms. Those are typically classified in two major groups, the monocots and the dicots. With regards to the dicots, we can go into more detail about those, but most texts are set up as monocots and dicots. So monocots typically display one, so monocot is cotyledon seed leaf within their seeds. Their veins typically have parallel venation, and the flower parts are in threes. We'll be looking at a lily in a minute here. Dicots have two seed leaves. The flower parts are in twos, fours, or fives, and their leaves are bare net-like venation. So sample classification example here, the kingdom on the top left, the name of the plant kingdom planted, phylum division, class. Here is where the monocots and the dicots come into play. Order, family, genus, and we primarily the easiest, most manageable groups to work with are the families and the genus and the species name. So that's typically what, when we're teaching, we, mention the family name of the plant and the genus and species. And that really helps if we're teaching the Native Plant Society of Texas classes. It's useful, I think, to learn which plants belong to which families. A lot of times that'll give you clues on which pollinators they use, because the pollinators typically will feed within one family of a plant if they're specialists. Okay, so then we can confuse everything by adding varieties and forms and subspecies. Well, those often, most taxonomists, many taxonomists actually feel that those are synonymous with each other. A cultivar, though, is one that is created or produced by a cultivation, hence cultivar. So they are produced via hybridization or artificial selection. So here's our flower parts. So pardon me, this is very basic. Some of you, this is really super basic, but many of you have never had, an intro botany. So I'll just go over this. The corolla refers to the colored parts or the petals of the plants. The calyx is a collective term for the green or sepals that are typically below the petals on the plant. Now, in England, I think it's pronounced teple, but here we say tepals. Is the term used for when you can't distinguish the petals from the sepals, as in the lily flowers that we have there. And then the perianth is a collective term for the petals and the sepals together. So if you know, the male parts are the stamen, composed of the anther where the pollen is, and filament, which is the stalk. And the stigma is the upper sticky part of the ovary, and the extension between those is the stalk. Another term for that, stigma, style, and ovary, is the pistil. So it's very important when you're keying wildflowers or flowers, basically. The position of the ovary is very important. So we'll look at that today on the flower. We'll do that in a few minutes. You have to look at how the stamens and the petals and sepals are attached with relation to the pistil. So the one on the left, it shows the pistil sitting on top of the attachment of the stamens and the petals and the sepals, sitting on top of the sepal. And in that situation, the pistil is, the ovary is superior, right? It's sitting on top. Another term that you'll see often for that situation is hypogynous. That means below the female. Makes sense, right? And inferior ovaries are off. Epigynous, epi, above the gynoecium. So the parts are attached above the ovary. And then, of course, you have a lot of in between. Some are halfway also. All right. So symmetry and arrangement is important when you're observing and keying flowers. The wine cup, it shows radial symmetry. Whereas a salvia flower, if you were to cut it lengthwise, it shows bilateral symmetry. Okay, so why don't we pass out some flowers now? And if you would please, a warning, the pollen on these will stain. So, and I've been told you need to have one here. You took it, put it inside. Large or paper. We're gonna do the lily. Yeah. Thank you. So the share a flower with your name, okay? So that's why we're sitting there. Spread out your, you two get to share. Well, I think you. There we go.
Oh, right here.
Yeah. You brought it in. Flowers, if not, we can use buds, they work perfectly. And I'll work with you.
Am I supposed to be doing anything right now?
Nope.
Okay, I'm meeting an apple tonight.
Just don't eat the lily because they're toxic. Yeah, lilies are toxic. I'll take it. All right. So, you can open your dissecting kit. Everybody. Hey, open your dissecting kit, please, and have it ready. And what we'll do is we'll just follow on my guide here. We talked about the two classes of plants, dicots and monocots, right? So look at the type of veins in the leaves on this. What do you see? Parallel. And that's an indication of a monocot. Very good. All right, so this is a hybrid oriented lily. Okay. All right, so we'll go through some basic terms. Again, the collective term for the colored parts of the flower is the perianth. Okay, in this case, you can't really tell the sepal from the petals, so we'll be calling these, yes, you're gonna sneeze from the flowers. Right? They all look fairly similar, so these are tepals. All right, so what I want you to do first is over your paper, peel off all your tepals and count how many tepals you have. And go ahead, start here. Don't shy. Okay. How many tepals do you have? Oh, some of you are just being so graceful and slowly peeling your teeth. And there's an extra paper towels there you guys can use for your hands. Okay. So how many did everybody have? Six. Another theme of a monocot, right? And flower parts and trees. Okay. So now. Let's look at the male part of the flower. You'll see the anther with the pollen on top. Okay. And the filament is the long structure that attaches it to the receptacle in this case. So the pollen is produced in those anthers. All right, so what I want you to do now is pull the stamens off and count the number of stamens that you have. So you're gonna emasculate these plants. Go ahead. I'll take everybody's. Oh, that's all right. So we have a request for pollen here, so don't throw your lily anthers away. A dime, that makes perfect sense. All right, so how many stamens do you have? Six again, a good chance that it's an on. All right, now let's look at the position of the ovary. The swollen part below is the ovary. The long extension is style, and then you have the stigma, the sticky stigma on the top, which is what the pollen adheres to. So look down at the stigma, and what do you see? Three lobes, right? So another indication of its being a monoclast. Okay. Now, is this a superior or an inferior? Superior, very good. Does everybody understand that? Right? Your ovary is sitting superior to where the stamens and the petals are. Right? Okay, let's do this. So you can get one of the either razor blade or scalpel out. Be careful. So far, nobody's ever injured themselves. Decades I've been teaching this. And then again, you notice the three-part stigma. Take the ovary and make a cross section of it. So make a little slice, like you're cutting a cucumber through the ovary. Okay?
Just straight down, cut it in half, basically.
Yeah, longitudinal would be lengthwise, cross section of the cross.
So we're going across.
Yep.
All right.
Cross the ovary. So within that, you see the ovary has chambers, right? And some of you may notice there may be some little white ovules within those. Yeah. It really depends on the cultivar, the age of the plant, or whatever. So again, count the number of lobes. Okay. So another indication that you are working with monoclonal. Okay. Easy enough. So I picked a big easy flower. All right, now we're going to do something quite different. And you'll need your loops. You know what a loop is, right? All right. This is the loop, and it has different magnifier lenses in it. So to start using that, you have to hold it close to the object and then bring the loop toward your eye, and that will bring it into focus. So I saw a bunch of my wrinkles just now. So what we'll work on next are sunflowers. All right. So I'll let you again compare if you want to work. So Bobby was kind enough to cut these sunflowers in quarters for you. Unfortunately, I don't have any leaves of they stripped all the leaves off of the bouquet. But look at the image. That's a relative of the sunflower there, Rebecca. And based on the leaves, you can sort of see their net-like. So this would be an example of a dark color on color. Everybody's got one? And then get your little nifty drawing that I copied for you of composite flowers. Does everybody have a copy of it?
No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. I'll take anybody else? Pretty cool, isn't it?
Mhm.
So you thought this whole thing was a flower, right? No, no. The other name for the aster family is composite, so it's a composite flower. So it's a head that is very contracted, constricted, and all the flowers are attached to the receptacle there. You see the word receptacle on your diagram? And on the board, I mean, on the screen. Okay, and see where the ray flowers are and the disc flowers? Look at your screen. Okay. And using your loop, and well, first your hands, you can just pop off or break these off and you'll be able to dislodge the developing seeds and flowers. So these outer flowers with the colorful ligule or petal those are the ray flowers, right? Okay. And all right, so you can
Oh, okay, all right.
break it off. That's usually the best way, and then it'll just fall apart in your hand.
Uh-uh.
Okay, so I've managed to get a ray flower and a disc flower. And then you can use your magnifier, your loop, and then bring it close to the object you're looking at, and then bring the loop towards your eye, and that way you can focus. Okay. So yeah. It's very easy to see the seeds that are developing, right? And those will form your sunflower seeds. In the case of the sunflower, the fruit is called a akene. And it's a dry fruit developed from a single ovary. Now notice on that blow-up drawing of the ray and the disc flower below, you'll notice the little flaps on the right side above the developing ovary and seed. Those are actually, let's skip down here. Right. Those are what are called the pappus. Okay. And if you're familiar with dandelions, you know, the fluff that helps blow the seed around, those are also in the aster family. And what that is, they're just modified seedlets. Isn't that interesting? So those, the form, shape, or presence of those sepals on, in this case, the pappus is a special word in the aster family. Those are very diagnostic. So when you're keying out members of the aster family, you'll be looking at the pappus very closely. Some will be feather-like, some will be long bristles, some scales, some totally absent. So looking at that, the position of the petal on the ray flower and the little tubular corolla on the disc flower Are these inferior or superior
Spirit.
ovaries? Inferior, because the parts are attached above the developing ovary in the seed. Okay. Then also characteristic when you're looking at members of the aster family are special bracts that separate the flowers from one another. The term chaff or involucral bracts. So now everybody knows that these are composed of many, many, many flowers instead of just one flower, right? So the disc flowers are typically the fertile ones, but in some plants, even the ray flowers will be fertile. In some members of the aster family, they're all disc flowers, some are all ray flowers. In the case of little prairie dawn, it's mostly disc flowers and it has these little rudimentary ray flowers on the edge. Yep.
So in the case of these types of flowers, each little flower has to be pollinated.
Yes, and boy, do the bees love these.
Yeah.
Yep. So come back later, in the summer and you'll see our sunflowers will be in full bloom and very popular with our bees out there. Okay. So digest that. Now let's move on to fruits. So now, hopefully what we did now will give you little skills on how to start working on using a key and identifying flowers. All right, fruit types. In the case of the simple fruit, there are two kinds, the fleshy or the dry. Like the sunflower seed would be a good example of a dry fruit. A grape is a good example of a simple fleshy fruit. And then aggregate fruits, think of things like raspberries and blackberries. They originate from one flower with many separate pistils. And then they form an aggregate fruit. And for a compound fruit, think of pineapples and mulberries. Again, many flowers and many pistils. But in this case, the many flowers and many pistils fuse together to form fruit. So that's the difference between a compound and aggregate fruit. So here are some examples of fruits. The parsley hawthorn on the right is in the rose family. And a good proportion of the species in the rose family have a fruit called a cone, which is material from the receptacle grows out around the ovaries and forms the fleshy fruity part of the apple in this case, or pone. A cotton boll or an ocopod are good examples of capsules. All right, where they have sutures along the capsule, seeds are released. In some cases, you have capsules that have little pores at the top, like in the opium poppy. So the seed comes out like a shaker on the top. All right, and then plants that are called drupes have roots that are drupes. Think of a peach. You have a very stony interior seed area, and that's called, and then around it is the fleshy. All right, now vegetative features. We look at a vegetative plant and one with or without flowers. You'll see the end bud is called the terminal bud. And then very important, this is very important when you're keying, especially trees, that you look in the axil of the leaf. And the axil of the leaf is the area between the petiole or the stem of the leaf and the stem that it's attached to, right? Okay. So within that axil, the upper part, you'll find a bud. Here called the lateral bud, or you can also call them axillary buds. All right. In a few minutes, we'll be looking at some tree material and we'll be looking for those. So those are very important when you're trying to figure out whether a leaf is a compound leaf or a simple leaf. Because a lot of times people will look at, say, a pecan leaf, which is a compound leaf, and look at the little individual leaflets and think, well, those are individual leaves, but they're not. It's a compound leaf. And if you look at the base of the petiole on that leaf, you'll find an axillary bud or lateral bud. And that's your key. You won't see a bud associated with the leaflets. All right. So arrangement of leaves on a plant is very diagnostic. The idea on the left, you can see the leaves are attached in an alternate arrangement, right? And on the St. John's wort family, this is very typical for that family. Look at the pair of leaves on the far right, how they're attached to the stem. They're attached opposite. Okay. And again, types of leaves, simple leaves. On the left, the idea would be a simple leaf. You could blow that up and see a little axillary bud there. The smooth sumac that we have out in the ES garden, native garden, that's an example of one with a pinnately compound leaf, like a pecan or a hickory. Yes. Yes.
Is an axle a good way to determine the sex of the plant, whether it's a male or a female? Or is that just like in certain categories of plants? Or is there more than one way to determine
The axle is just a good vegetative character. The axillary bud or lateral bud is a good vegetative character to determine whether that leaf is a leaflet or is it actually the entire leaf. All right. So in the compound leaf, the little leaflets come off the center column of the leaf called the petiole, and you don't see the axillary buds on those little leaflets. Okay. All right. Now, a good example of one that's palmately compound is a buckeye. Okay. So you see all the leaflets are attached at one point, sort of like the palm of your hand. Then we could go on for days and days talking about the margins of leaves, the hairs on leaves. All of those are very diagnostic characteristics. You know, whether the bottom has a white sheen or matches the color on the top. You know, that's all part of getting used to using a taxonomic key. It's very good also. A lot of these keys will have a glossary in the back. So if you come across a name, a word that you don't recognize, the glossary will tell you. The Cunningham and Nixon book has an absolutely gorgeous illustrator glossary. So looking at this, external stem anatomy, look at that, and, this is a winter twig, right? You see where the terminal bud is. The little, dots represent the lenticels, which are just holes through the bark of the twig, and they allow for the passage of, gases in and out. Then you see the little axillary or lateral buds sitting there, right? And they're right above the leaf spot. So that was where the leaf was attached the previous year.
Mm,
So in that, this example, would the leaves have been alternate or opposite? In position? Opposite, right. And then in the terminology, that's the location of the leaves on the twig is called the node. Okay, so that part in between the point of attachment of the leaves is called the internode. And then in our temperate plants, you'll often see this wrinkle on the twig. And if you follow down from the terminal bud down to that wrinkle, that represents 1 year's growth of that twig. Now, that doesn't apply to tropical plants, but it does to our temperate plants. So again, one of my favorites, I'm just showing you there. And now we can look at some other features of plants using two sort of similar looking plants. Here.
So. No guesses. Got it. Got it.
All right, so everybody will have, you just have one here, okay? And you probably already know what these are, but it's just a good exercise to learn about, you know, basic twig, leaf terminology, and hone your observational skills. And you'll find these shrubs, small trees, and any greenway system, the forest in the Houston metro area. We're not to make tea out of the other because it's not. One reason wrong there. So at the end of the day, if you want to wrap, look at that. She's part of all the things. Can y'all think of a pollen stamen stigma that is used in the culinary arts? Saffron, yeah. This would be toxic. Saffron's from a type of crocus.
Saffron, like a station, flowers, different, that's used culinary as well. That kind of flower is a dust, that they, like flower.
All right, everybody have, there are two different, okay, examples. Okay, you can feel the difference between these two. One is very thin and the leaves are thin and flimsy feeling, and the others, they're thicker, more leathery. First of all, just looking at the leaves, are these diplots or monocots? Diplots is right. Okay, these are both very common in the green spaces all over the Houston metro area and beyond. On the screen, match it up. The one with the leathery leaves is evergreen, and the one the upper right with the thinner leaves is mostly evergreen. Okay. So here you go. Now we're going to look for lateral buds. So looking at this, you might think, oh, this is a compound leaf, right? Possibly. A pinnate leaf compound leaf, possibly. How do you find out? Use your loop and bend back the leaf, and you'll see a little tiny axillary bud in each of the axes, right?
On either one of those leaves? On either one of the leaves?
And both of the plants, in both cases. So bend back the axle of the leaf, right? Some of these examples.
What are we looking for when we bend it back?
You're looking for the lateral or axillary bud at the in between. It'll just be a little blip that you'll see between the stem and the petiole. You'll see. Having trouble? Oh yeah, usually forget it. And I'll have one. Hold it against the white of the table when you see it on this one. So, are these little leaves, or are they leaves? They would be leaves, right? Because they have that axillary bud. So what is the arrangement of these leaves? Opposite, right? Alternate, right? Okay. On the other example, you may also find the little axillary buds if you pull one of these axillary. Yeah. They're a little bit more difficult on my sample. Sorry about that. But these, depending on which twig you have, but it's still, I could see these are alternately arranged, right? In this case, I see that this twig is trying to form a little branching twig. But even the branches are alternate, right? So they're alternately arranged,
Hmm.
okay? And then everybody satisfied with that? So you can tell the difference between the two based on their leaf arrangement, right? Okay. Now, look at the margins of the leaves. What difference do you see in the margins? The one with the thin leaf, does it have a basically an entire margin? Okay, where the other one with the leathery leaves, yeah, they have a serrated margin, right? Okay, that's another difference. And then the texture, I've been saying this since the beginning, one is leathery and the other is very thin. So if you're stumbling through the woods at night, you can tell it's too far. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So the one with the opposite leaves is Chinese privet. Yeah, I guess from of the olive family. So you saw a specimen of that, the laminated specimen when I passed those around. Okay. It's invasive in the southeastern US. And one warning for those of you that are in need of caffeine, the yopon, which is the other plant, for that. Okay. Ilex vomitoria, and that's named because our Native Americans would make a drink out of the leaves, but it would be a highly concentrated drink to vomitoria, right? The same thing would happen if you would make an extremely highly concentrated drink of coffee. It would make all right. So this is the only species in the U.S. North America that has caffeine. So it makes a really nice tea if you dry the yopon leaves, but you know, for liability reasons, I'm not gonna.
They sell drinks now that have
Oh, yeah.
yopon, yeah.
Now, if you go further south, into South America, you've heard of Europe, okay?
Yeah.
That's a relative, another island, another holly, but a different species, and it's also caffeinated. So now you learned a little bit about examining trees. Okay, another difference between these two. Privet is what's termed a monoecious plant. That means it has both the male and female flower parts on one plant. Some of you actually have some of the plant and flower. Whereas hollies, they're very special in that they're dioecious. That means they have separate male and female plants, right? So, did any of you have any berries on your? Yes. Okay. Good. So you probably we were collecting these from different trees. So the berries would indicate you have a female plant. The males do not have fruit. They both will flower, and it's actually difficult to differentiate the flowers, but because both will have stamens and ovaries, but one will just be smaller than the other ones. So, okay. All right, so here's a review up here, really, just to wake you up. Are these monocots or dicots? Which is alternate and which is opposite? Which is native and which is introduced? So Yopon, I actually love that thing quite a bit. It's quite a pain if you're doing restoration on prairies. Burning is a wonderful way to since we have moved away from, natural fires for obvious reasons, it's very easy for an area to Yopon. But what's nice is you can trim them and shape them however you want. If you go to our endangered native garden when it's not raining, we have several cultivars there for actual natural forms of Ilex somatoria. One is a large leaf discovered by Lynn Lowry. A Houston area plants them, very famous, and passed away. A yellowberry yopon. We have a columnar shaped yopon. One that's weeping. And the little dwarf male yopon used for more ornamental plantings is in the very center of that forest. Very cute little plant. Very popular in the trade. Am I forgetting any others? I think that's all. So, all right. Is this a monocot or a dicot? Dicot. Sorry, I didn't have leaves, but this one is. We should have looked at the little points on the tubular corolla on the disc flowers, and you probably would have seen 4 or 5 points on it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, what about this beautiful lily? Yeah. And what about this? Is it a gymnosperm or an angiosperm? Yay. Y'all were awake. All right. So if you want we go to 12:30, is that correct? Yeah. All right. So if you would like a little bit of a break now, if you would, let's get a garbage can out.
Oh, it's compost. Right?
I'll walk around.
Can we compost them? Yeah.
Material, plastic bag, and I will come. Yeah, the Yopon and the prison thing to be hard. Yeah, water paper,
And you said you want to keep this composted.
Yeah, that could be composted. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. This is the one that I really like, Michael Ethan. Wildfire.
Please.
But the Corellia is pretty similar to the other. This one is look at Michael. And his book is up there. I think, looking at it. Really good. Yeah, I used to get one Atlas books.
Okay.
For my first thing that there.
That's fantastic.
Maybe it's a bit different.
I don't hear anything, Scooter.
So are y'all ready to look at a few more pretty plant slides?
That's right. Y'all ready to start?
I am.
Okay. My colleague Gary, Fernandez, came to office and discussing group of the American Outdoors Association. It's a wonderful guy, called Botany in the Day, it's a basic crash course in botany. And, has a lot of detail in it. I've just read a few pages of it so far, and it's wonderful. It has, great descriptions of plant families in it. The author is from Nebraska, so he sort of focuses on the northern flora. But I see he mentions that he's introducing more of the southern flora in the next edition. So it's a very good book. I recommend it. Botany in a Day by Thomas Elpel. So Bob Daly spoke to you about native plants, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go through a few images to finish today, just so you can relax and enjoy some nice images, plants. And then for those of you that wish to go on a tour, we'll stop around 12:30 and have our lunch, and then we'll go over to the botanical center. Okay. So all of these images were taken by Suzanne Chapman. You'll see some of the framed native plant images around the foyer and this room. You also heard that some may be the same in one show. But I wanted to go through just a few examples of monocot families, some of the really pretty ones, and then switch over to dicot families. I don't know how Bob Daly arranged his, but I like to do it my family. So the Amaryllis family, monocot, okay, oil producing. They're mostly tropical, subtropical. Many important ornamentals like amaryllis, daffodils, many toxic, and important food crops like onions and chives. And here's a little local example of one. Crow poison or false scarlet. It's in the amaryllis family. Early in the spring, you'll see, especially in mediums and all the celestial little white flowers blooming. That's crow poison. We have no idea why it was called Crow Origin. I have no idea, but I put crow there.
It smells like garlic a lot. If you mow it or something, it smells a lot.
Yeah, that's right. All right, then this beautiful rain lily. Giant prairie rain lily. Okay. Can you see the theme of 3 in this one again? Okay. Then the Aran family, monocot, mostly tropical, subtropical. One of our notorious local invasives is elephant ears, taro. Invasive in the U.S., staple food in Hawaii, right? And many other countries. Duck roots are also in there. So here's another local beautiful forest wildflower called green dragon. Have it come up around the ES native gardens along the trail. So relative of Jack and the Pulpit. Then the sedge family, you saw the notorious deep-rooted sedge today. The monocot, the families worldwide, closely related rushes than it is to grasses. They have a triangular cross section. If you were to cut this down. Water chestnut and papyrus are examples of cyperaceae. Cherokee sedge is a lovely little sedge that grows in our area. Nice little plant for landscaping too. And you saw this one, the white top sedge, down in the ES and native garden. Hopefully notice that one was close to the pitcher plant. And this is one of the few sedges that actually insect pollinated. That's why it has those flashy white bracts to attract insects. Most of the others are wind pollinated. Then the iris family, again, monocot, tropical Americas, Africa, many ornamentals. Here's one of our lovely native blue flag eye. Orchid family. The orchid family and the monocots and the sunflower family and the dicots are considered the largest plant families. So the orchid family has 28,000 species, 800 genera. Every continent on Earth except Antarctica. Dust-like seeds that require a fungal associate in order to obtain nutrients. So then, you know, vanilla orchid, right, as the spice. And unfortunately, those folks that collect orchids in the wild, often it's a death sentence because you're losing that fungal association with the soil. If you're lucky and next time you go to Jesse Jones or Sister Park, Nature Center, you'll find this plant blooming along the trails in the summer. It's a very cool plant. Crested coral reef orchid. And in this case, this little orchid is again, it requires a fungus to obtain nutrients, and it has no chlorophyll and found in oak hickory woodlands. It taps a lot of times with the adjacent trees. The fungus helps the conduit plant on the tree. I'll be calling it. So many of the ones. And ladies' tresses, sorry that that's cut off on the top. Some are very common in this area, and there's one federally listed one around the College Station area called Navasota ladies' dresses. And then the grass family, the Palaceae, monocots, They're also a very large family, very economically important. Food, forage, building materials, fuel, bamboos. So you saw this guy out in the garden today. It's a very nice addition to any garden. And this one is, we love this. This is native to our prairies here. It's used in many of our along roadsides here for ornamental planting. Downtown, you'll see it around the medical center. It's a ornamental plant. Water hyacinth family. It's very small, tropical and subtropical. The bad guy that I can think of is water hyacinth. And it's one of the world's worst weeds. It's native to the Amazon. So if you see it, pull it out and throw it out. Then tickleweed, that's a beautiful relative. It's doesn't float, it's anchored into the soil. We have examples of that in the DS native garden. And now, again, I'm showing you a few things. Now we'll move into the dicots. The sumac family has many toxic species. Poison ivy, poison sumac. Some people are actually even allergic to cashews and mangoes. Right? Here's a common native in this area that's not toxic. In fact, I've had tea made out of the fruit of this that gives a very nice lemon flavor to a tea. And we have that in native garden. Another large family, the carrot family. A lot of herbs, but then some of the most toxic species also. Poison hemlock and water hemlock. So once in a while you'll hear of, even in Texas, people collecting this thinking it's parsley and they die. So be careful. This is a really cool Denver, the carrot family, rattlesnake master, and it's in bloom in the garden right now. Then the dog bane family, named so because the ancient Greeks used these dog poison. And our milkweed family was dissolved, and the taxonomists have included the milkweeds in this family now. So here's our shore milkweed. A lot of people call this aquatic milkweed also. Now in the Apple-Sinacea instead of the Epiphytaceae. Holly family. You're familiar with that from your Yopon, right? Dicon, worldwide tropic temperates. Most are evergreen trees and shrubs, popular ornamentals. And here's the possum haw, one of my favorites. This one is, of course, a female. And this one is deciduous. So you'll see it in the winter, totally bare stems, but these brilliant red berries on. Ilex palmataria, yes. Thank you. And you saw that in the ES and native garden, the small, low-growing heads. You don't need to trim it hardly at all. It just stays for all year. Thank you. All right. This is a Yopon holly, trimmed up in a different shape. Thank you. You might have to chat. Good job. All right. Now we're at our sunflower family, large dicot family, arranged in beds. Many ornamentals, marigolds, calendula, lettuce, sunflower oil, artichokes. Yarrow is in that family. Here's Plains coreopsis, very beautiful. In fact, we have a lot of those blooming in the bare field between the garden and the greenhouses. Purple sunflower, coneflower. This one is actually only native to the little northeast corner of Texas, but we like it so much. I love it.
Yeah, it is so good.
Here's another one. This one is native to our area, Echinacea pallida. Has those interesting drooping ray petals. So again, it shows you views of the fruits and through the head of fruits. Fleabane, I love this one. We have a lot of Philadelphia fleabane just has gone out of flower here. And it has very sweet scent, a very good pollinator plant. This one's an annual. Then this one, the mist flower is such a reliable fall blooming nectar plant and host plant with a bordered patch, also in the sunflower family. And here are your gay feathers. Both of these are native. We have both of these on, no, just the Pycnostaphia, the Kansas one on display in our garden. The acidota or shark gay feather is one that you'll see in the prairies, and we have many of these at the little prairie preserve.
When do those bloom, Anita?
When do they bloom? Summerish. Yeah. So here is a blow up of the heads from the Kansas or blazing star is the common name used in our area of town. So these are composed of disc flowers only. Cool, huh? And then Lindenheimer texana is another beautiful aster, member of the aster family, named after the botanist Lindenheimer. Texas Star, that's the name of it, right? You know, I have never really tried to figure out whether they were or not, but I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it if, you know, the natives use the rootstocks on those because they're, you know, quite starchy, but it's a good thing to look up. I don't know the name. But yeah, this one's, I think, called Texas Star. I forgot to put the common name in. And black or brown eyed Susan, Rebecca Herta. We have that here for you to look at.
So
Yes.
I see two varieties that look pretty similar, and I guess they're both from the coneflower family.
Yeah, there are a lot of Rebecca's in the area, and here.
Because like there's some black-eyed Susan that looks like the coneflower and vice versa. They look pretty similar, but their leaf shape is different. Well, the whole plant really looks different, but the flower is pretty similar.
I'd have to, you know, see the whole thing, but you can flip through there, look under the aster family and alphabetically go to Rebecca. But this one here, I love, you can see this in the ES native garden. It makes a really wonderful basil rosette during the winter and much of the year, and then produces these really pretty yellow flowers. Goldenrod. Goldenrod is certainly one of our top pollinator plants in the area. So we always leave goldenrod in our gardens. This one is altissima, a very tall growing goldenrod, but we learned if we cut off a third of it in June, it'll stay shorter and not flop over in your bed. This is not the ragweed, it does not give you. Here's a pretty aster called smooth blue aster. Then the waterleaf family. We have some interesting ones here. American family. This one we have also in the wetland part of our BS and native garden. Blue waterleaf. It has some of the most intense blue flowers that I know. Little slightly prickly stems. Trumpet creeper family. Mostly tropical. Most are woody, many vines. These, I'm sure everybody knows, jacarandas, the Buddhas. Spathodia is the African flame tree, I believe. Here's crossvine is a member of that. The bellflower family, many ornamentals, small family worldwide. It's campanulus, lobelias, platycodon. And this is a member of the bellflower family. Pardon flower. This blooms toward the end of the summer, fall, and perfect for the hummingbird migration. Honeysuckle family. Worldwide. Let's see, except in tropical in South Africa. Tubular, bell-shaped leaves opposite. So you know our beautiful trumpet, coral honeysuckle here. And we didn't talk about the Japanese honeysuckle, but that's one of our prime invasives in our area. These are built to be pollinated by hummingbirds. Bittersweet family, mostly tropical. Strawberry bush, very unusual shrub, and I think we're starting to get these to bloom and set fruit in our garden. Dogwood family. Cornaceae. Oh, I didn't show you this. Ever take a leaf of, say, a rough dogwood or any dogwood, and you just pull it apart so that, you know, the leaf splits in the middle and you tug it a little bit, it'll have the fibers of the vascular tissue will hold the two pieces together. That's sort of a fun thing. We call it the Cornus test. So Cyrilla, another small family of the Americas, ornamentals like the Titine. This one's found very common to the big thicket area. Heath family, very economically important. Rhododendrons. And then on top of that, we have fruit-bearing members, the vacciniums, blueberries, huckleberries, and that super unusual plant called Indian cactus, which is a parasitic plant. So here's one of our native rhododendrons, another big thicket plant. Bean family. It's third after orchids, sunflower families and signs. Obviously, it's a very economically important soybeans, peas, peanut, alfalfa, carrot. The fruit is pod-like. So here's one of the really cool native examples. We have this one also in our gardens, the false indigo. Yeah, good host plant for a number of sulfur, cloudy rings, skippers. This is an interesting image showing how this red bud is blooming from the trunk of the tree. it, blooms also from axils of the leaves and. So wonderful edible flowers for salads. Host plant for Henry's elephant butterfly. Okay, Texas bluebonnet. St. John's wort family. Usually opposite, often yellow, worldwide. And Hypericum densiforum is a good example of a local force, local species. Anita family. Used as ornamental, so this is a beautiful plant. I think we have a couple of examples in the PS and native. Look at the fall foliage, very pretty. Mass plantings are beautiful. It's taken in previous years. Mint family, very popular, culinary herbs, right? Mint, rosemary, sage, savory, all those. Typically, the stems are square in cross section. And typically, the flowers are bilaterally symmetrical. Typically opposite. Notice we use typically because there's always exception. So, Captain Clarka, Americana, the American beauty berries. Beautiful. Salvia coccinea.
Hey,
Yep.
on the American Beauty Berry, you
Mhm.
some stuff, I've heard several like things is you're edible but non palatable, but it also will give you like different
I've eaten jelly made out of it. So,
curd jelly.
yeah, but well, some people may be allergic to it, so, yeah, maybe. But yeah, it makes a really colorful jelly. And it's a great wildlife plant. This one is so reliable in the shade or sun. It's wonderful to see the hummingbirds hitting these in the heat of the summer in the shade. Blue sage, that's in bloom right now in the garden, you walk right by it. Lyrata is a spring blooming one, a very important early bloomer for pollinators. Wax myrtle family. Usually aromatic. Temperate to tropical. Usually dioecious. So wax myrtle here, right? Bayberry. Evening primrose family. Worldwide, fuchsia is one example that I know. And or Bora. This one is Lindheimer's. Beautiful plant. Favorite of bees. Pink evening primrose. Speciosa means it's beautiful. And that. And I really do think it's a beautiful plant. This one would be a good one for you to pick. Because there's so many, it's very common. And try your hand at pulling that flower apart. It's a dipot. And looking at all the parts in it. If we had time, we would have done it. Malvaceae, the mal family, widespread, economically important. Cotton, chocolate. Very important, right? Yes. Wine cups. Turk's cap. More Turk's cap. Various hibiscus, native hibiscus. The one rare one I show on the right that we're working on. Olive family, worldwide. Trees, shrubs, vines, jasmine, forsythia, lilacs, Asian critter. Olive oil, yay, okay. Here, this is a beautiful native in the olive family here, the French one. Broom rake family. This is widespread. This family recently they've included the paintbrush wildflowers and the false foxgloves into this family. They're hemiparasitic and they're four totally parasitic, that means they rely on neighboring plants. Again, using fungal associates also. So your Indian paintbrush, poppy family. Northern hemisphere mostly, many ornamental, opium, poppy flowers. Prickly poppy is a member in our area. Phlox family, you saw the Texas Australian one, not in bloom. We have some in bloom in the nursery. Dipot, many ornamentals. This one, I believe, the Drummond's phlox is probably one of the first ornamental plants brought to Europe after the colonization of the United States. Beautiful. Woodland phlox. Ranunculaceae, the buttercup family. So clematis, delphiniums are in that family. The anemone is a very common member. Native is a very pretty plant. Shown here with beneficial milkweed has in the rose family, well known economically. Beautiful flowers from the roses. Fruits, cherries, peaches, apricots, almonds, raspberries, loquats, strawberries, all in this family. Parsley hawthorn. Rubiaceae, very important family. Coffee. Quinine, gardenias, pentas. Here you go. Here's a beautiful member of that family. Buttonbush. Soapberry. This family keeps expanding and contracting by taxonomies. The maples and the buckeyes were included in the last decades, and now I think they're moving them back down. So here's a member of the soapberry family, also soon to be back in the buckeye family. Nectar plant for hummingbirds, beautiful. Verbenas, lantana is a common example here. Here's the rose verbane. And our frog fruit. I actually took a picture of our leopard frog in the middle of this, and I need to use that next time we see it. Violet family. Missouri violet is an excellent ground cover for this area. And here we go. Lady Bird Johnson said, I don't know if Bob mentioned this, give us a sense of where we are in this great land of ours, since what our native plants do. Wildflowers do much more than add beauty to the landscape. They help conserve water, reduce mowing, provide habitat for our wildlife, and protect our soil, and save money on fertilizer and pesticides. There we go.